You are lying in the dark, completely still, and you feel it. Not grief exactly, not fear, something closer to being hollowed out. The practices that used to bring you comfort bring nothing. Prayer feels like speaking into a sealed room. Meditation sits flat and tasteless. The things that once moved you, the warmth, the sense of presence, the feeling that you were, somehow, loved by something larger than yourself, have gone quiet. And the worst part is not the absence. The worst part is that you begin to wonder if any of it was ever real. This is a summary of The Dark Night of the Soul by San Juan de la Cruz, St. John of the Cross, written in 16th century Spain, and still, 5 centuries later, one of the most precise maps of spiritual suffering ever made. If a summary like this is what you need on nights like this, subscribing takes one tap. The ache this book addresses is specific. It is not the doubt of the skeptic who never believed. It is the emptiness that comes to the person who believed deeply, who worked, who prayed, who burned with something genuine, and then woke one morning to find the fire out. That person picks up John of the Cross and reads the first pages and feels, perhaps for the first time in months, that someone understands exactly what has happened to them, and more than that it was supposed to happen. The book moves in 2 large phases. The first is the night of the senses, the stripping away of emotional and physical consolations in prayer. The second is the night of the spirit, the deeper, rarer, more total darkness, where even the intellectual certainty of God is withdrawn. Both phases are treated as necessary stages on the road to what John calls the union of love, the direct, transforming encounter between the soul and God. Before the darkness begins, there is the problem of the beginners. What beginners get wrong. John opens by cataloging the spiritual faults of people who are new to the interior life. He names 7: pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. But in their spiritual forms, which are subtler and harder to see than their obvious versions. The spiritual glutton, for example, is not a person who eats too much. They are a person addicted to the feeling of devotion. They pray in order to feel the warmth of prayer. They pursue spiritual experiences the way someone else pursues pleasure. And so, without knowing it, they have made God into a source of emotional gratification rather than a being worthy of love for its own sake. John is blunt about what happens next. God takes the feeling away, not as punishment, as education. The spiritual proud person congratulates themselves on their progress. They compare themselves favorably to others who seem less devout. They correct their directors. They believe, somewhere beneath the surface, that their virtue belongs to them. This too must be broken, and it cannot be broken by effort alone. No amount of resolve, John says, will strip these roots from the soul. They go too deep. Only the dark night can reach them. The practical thing to take from this is painful but clear. If you are doing the work of inner life primarily because it feels good, you are building on something that will be taken away. The question is not whether the feeling will end. The question is whether anything will remain when it does. And the only way to find out what remains is to pass through the moment when the feeling is gone. The first night when God goes silent. The night of the senses begins, says John, when a person who has been faithful in their practice simply stops receiving what they came for. The warmth is gone. Meditation, which once flowed naturally, now stops at the very first step. The imagination sits blank. The heart, which used to open during prayer, stays closed. Most people, undergoing this, assume they have done something wrong. John says, look for the signs. 3 of them. First, you find no consolation anywhere, not in God, not in the world. Second, you still want to serve God, still turn toward what is good, even without the feeling. Third, when you try to use your imagination in prayer, it produces nothing. If all 3 signs are present, you are not in spiritual laziness or depression. You are in the night of the senses. God has withdrawn the emotional reward deliberately, precisely because you are ready for something more. Here is what John says is actually happening. A mother nurses an infant at the breast. The infant receives warmth, closeness, nourishment. But at some point, the mother begins to wean the child, not because she loves it less, but because it needs to learn to walk, to eat solid food, to become something more than an infant. The withdrawal of consolation is the beginning of that weaning. The soul is being asked to love without reward, to serve without feeling, to believe without sensation. This is not abandonment. This is the training of the mature. The practical weight of this is significant. Many people abandon spiritual practice at exactly this point. They conclude that the dryness means the practice has failed, or that they have failed. John says they are leaving at the most important moment. The aridness is not the absence of progress. It is progress. What looks like a dead season is the season of deepest change. The second night, darkness without a floor. If the night of the senses strips away the feelings, the night of the spirit strips away the certainties. John says very few souls enter this second phase. He describes it as more fearsome than anything in the first. In the second night, the soul finds itself not merely without comfort, but without the intellectual ground it has always stood on. All the theological ideas that once felt solid and clarifying now feel distant and unreal. The person cannot think their way through to God. Their understanding goes dark, and in this darkness, something terrible happens. They begin to believe that God has not merely hidden from them, but has actively turned away. That they are, at some deep level, rejected. John says this feeling is a lie, but it is a lie produced by the process of purification itself, the way fire produces smoke before it produces light. He uses an image that appears several times in the text: a log in a fire. When the fire first touches wet wood, the wood does not flame. It smokes, spits, hisses, seems to resist. The heat appears to make the wood worse before it makes it better. What is actually happening is that the fire is burning off the moisture, the impurities, the parts that cannot withstand the flame. The pain is real. The process is necessary. The end is transformation. There is a moment during this second night, John says, when the soul believes it is not only abandoned, but that it always was, that whatever it once felt was an illusion it generated for itself. This is, he says, the most dangerous moment. The soul forgets that it cannot see itself clearly from inside the darkness, the way the eye, pointed directly at a bright light, sees nothing but blackness. What it interprets as absence is actually proximity. What feels like God withdrawing is, in a precise sense, God arriving, too close to see. This is the dark night's central paradox. The light that will eventually unite the soul with God is the same light that, in its early action, causes the darkness. The two are not opposites. They are the same thing at different stages of its work. The latter, nobody teaches you about. Near the end of the book, John describes what he calls the 10 steps of the mystical ladder of divine love, drawing on Saint Bernard and Saint Thomas Aquinas. This is the book's most direct structural map of how transformation actually unfolds. The first step is the soul becoming, in John's word, sick with love, losing its appetite for everything that is not God, the way a fever patient loses appetite for food. The second step is restless seeking, unable to stop searching even when nothing is found. The third is the willingness to suffer without complaint in service of the beloved, the way Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel and the years felt short. The fourth step is endurance. The soul stops seeking its own consolation from God and begins to care only for what God desires, even at cost to itself. The fifth step is an impatient, almost anguished longing that cannot rest anywhere. Steps 6 through 10 move from longing into a territory harder to describe in plain language. The soul runs toward God, moved by something beyond ordinary motivation. Then it becomes, in John's language, drunk with love, barely aware of itself, fully absorbed in what it has found. Then comes the eighth step, which John describes as the soul taking hold of the beloved and not releasing. The ninth step is one of burning, the soul on fire, not metaphorically, but in the specific sense that everything in it that could resist has been consumed and only warmth remains. And the 10th step, full transformation, full union, where the soul no longer seeks because it has arrived. The point of naming all 10 rungs is not to give you a checklist. It is to do exactly what John intended, to let you know where you are. The person in the second or third step, experiencing restlessness and willingness to suffer, often believes they are failing. John says, "You are climbing." The person in the fourth step, losing the need for consolation, often feels cold and empty. John says, "You are advancing." The ladder does not feel like ascent while you are on it. It rarely does. What the dark night actually produces. Late in the book, John lists what comes out of the dark night when it has done its work. He says the soul, having passed through the aridness and conflict, finds herself with a freedom she never had before. Her 4 passions, joy, grief, hope, and fear, have been quieted, not destroyed, quieted, ordered, no longer running wild, no longer chasing sensation or fleeing discomfort. She finds herself, to use John's phrase, loving with purity. She is no longer doing the right thing because it feels good. She is doing it because it is right. That shift, from motivated by feeling to motivated by love itself, is what the entire journey is designed to produce. And then this, the house is at rest, both houses, the lower house of the senses and the upper house of the spirit. When both are silent, not by suppression, but by purification, the soul is ready for what John calls the divine espousals, the deepest encounter the interior life makes possible. The person who went through that hollowed-out silence in the dark, who kept showing up even when nothing came back, who did not mistake the dryness for abandonment, that person is now standing somewhere new. They love without needing the feeling of love to justify the loving. John of the Cross wrote this in the 16th century, locked in a prison cell in Toledo, put there by members of his own religious order. He had no books. He had a slit of a window near the ceiling. He wrote the original poem that this book explains, the poem about the soul slipping out at night to find the beloved, from memory in the dark. He knew what he was writing about. So the question to carry into sleep tonight is this: what if the silence you've been running from is not the end of the story, but the middle of it? And the middle is exactly where it needs to be. If something in this summary stayed with you tonight, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. and a like helps more than you know.